The story of Mont Saint-Michel and the Archangel Michael does not begin with quiet devotion or peaceful worship. It begins with rebellion, an uprising that shattered the harmony of heaven itself. At the heart of this rebellion was Satan, once an angel of light, radiant and beautiful beyond human imagination. He was not created as a monster, nor did he begin as an enemy of God. Rather, he began in glory, with gifts and talents that could have been used to magnify the divine. Yet in the mystery of free will, Satan turned inward, seeking not to serve but to dominate. And in that choice, pride gave birth to corruption. But rebellion in heaven could not remain abstract. It needed a face, a form, a manifestation of what it truly was. And so, in the legend of Mont Saint-Michel, Satan did not appear as himself. He took on a new form, a monstrous dragon, immense and terrifying, a creature that symbolized not only his hatred, but his complete rejection of the order of God. This transformation was no accident. It was deliberate, meant to strike terror into all who beheld him, a statement of defiance that said, "I will not serve. I will destroy." The dragon's image in this story carries a weight far greater than its physical description. Yes, we can imagine its massive wings stretching out to blot the sky, its fiery breath scorching everything in its path, its claws tearing through the foundations of creation. But beyond these frightening features, the dragon embodied something far deeper: chaos. In biblical symbolism, the dragon represents everything that stands against the divine order: rebellion, destruction, and darkness. By taking on this form, Satan was no longer merely a fallen angel. He had become the incarnation of evil itself. This transformation was more than cosmetic, it was spiritual. When an angel rejects God, he does not simply turn away. He becomes twisted, disfigured, and broken. In Satan's case, that inner corruption spilled outward until his very form reflected his rebellion. What once radiated with heavenly light was now shrouded in shadow. What once brought harmony now brought terror. In the form of a dragon, Satan became the perfect symbol of opposition: proud, fierce, uncontrollable, and bent on devouring all that is good. Against this monstrous figure stood the Archangel Michael. He too bore a form meant to communicate more than physical presence. Unlike the dragon, Michael's appearance was not grotesque or exaggerated, but disciplined and purposeful. Clothed in armor, carrying the sword of righteousness, Michael embodied not chaos but order, not destruction but protection. If Satan's dragon form declared rebellion, Michael's armored stance proclaimed loyalty. Where Satan embodied pride, Michael embodied humility. His strength was not his own, but God's, and he wielded it with unshakable resolve. The juxtaposition of these two figures, Satan the dragon and Michael the warrior, sets the stage for one of the most dramatic confrontations in sacred legend. On one side, a creature whose very existence now radiated defiance, whose power was rooted in hatred and destruction. On the other, an angel whose authority came not from self but from service, whose weapons were not only sword and shield, but also faithfulness and justice. The transformation of Satan into a dragon is not just a detail in the story. It is the heart of its symbolism. It reminds us that evil rarely appears as it truly is in its beginnings. Satan began as Lucifer, a name meaning light-bearer, beautiful and glorious. But unchecked pride and ambition warped that light until it became darkness. By the time he faced Michael, he was no longer recognizable. He had become his own rebellion, clothed in scales, wings, and fire. Evil, the story suggests, has a way of remaking those who embrace it, twisting their identity until all that remains is a shadow of what once was. This moment in the legend also reflects a profound truth about the nature of good and evil. Evil does not create, it corrupts. Satan did not invent his own being. He twisted what was given. His dragon form is terrifying, yes, but it is a distortion, a parasite upon creation rather than a true creation in itself. Michael, in contrast, does not need to change form to fight. His power is not in distortion, but in fidelity. His armor is not borrowed from chaos, but granted by divine justice. Where Satan's transformation reveals rebellion, Michael's constancy reveals obedience. The dragon also serves another symbolic purpose. Throughout biblical tradition, the dragon is the enemy of God's people. From the serpent in Eden to the great dragon in the book of Revelation, the imagery is consistent. The dragon seeks to devour, to deceive, and to destroy. By appearing as a dragon, Satan aligns himself with that ancient pattern of opposition. He becomes the great devourer, the one who waits in the shadows to consume all that belongs to God. And yet, in the story of Mont Saint-Michel, the dragon's appearance is not only meant to terrify. It is also meant to reveal the stakes of the battle. This was no small quarrel among heavenly beings. This was the very definition of cosmic warfare: good versus evil, light versus darkness, order versus chaos. The dragon was not simply an enemy to be defeated. He was the embodiment of everything that threatened creation. His fiery breath symbolized destruction. His wings symbolized the spread of rebellion, and his claws symbolized the tearing apart of harmony. Against such a foe, the battle could not be half-hearted. It demanded total commitment, total loyalty, and total reliance on the strength of God. The transformation of Satan into a dragon also anticipates the struggle to come. Legends are not merely about the past. They speak to the present and the future. By showing Satan as a dragon, the story communicates that evil will always present itself as larger than life, overwhelming, terrifying. It will always seek to dominate through fear. Yet the presence of Michael assures us that such terror is not invincible. Even the fiercest dragon is no match for the one who fights in the name of God. As the story unfolds, the dragon does not remain in stillness. He spreads his wings and prepares for war. His roar echoes across the heavens, a challenge to the order of creation itself. Demons rally to his side, feeding on his defiance, drawn to his chaos like moths to a flame. The air grows heavy, the skies darken, and the stage is set for battle. The transformation is complete, not only of Satan, but of the heavens themselves. No longer a place of unbroken peace, the heavens now tremble under the shadow of the dragon. And yet, standing firm amid the roar, is Michael. He does not cower before the dragon's size, nor falter before the fire. His armor gleams, his sword is drawn, his gaze fixed not on the terror before him, but on the God who sent him. The battle is inevitable. The rebellion has taken its form. The dragon has risen, and now the warrior of heaven prepares to strike. 08705. The legend's first chapter, then, is not merely an introduction, but a revelation. It shows us what evil looks like when it casts aside its mask, when pride and rebellion are allowed to grow unchecked. It shows us that behind every act of chaos, there's a dragon waiting to consume. But it also shows us that where the dragon rises, Michael stands ready. The protector, the defender, the warrior of heaven does not retreat. It confronts. And in that confrontation, the story of Mont Saint-Michel truly begins. The first clash did not happen in some far-off celestial corner hidden from the eyes of creation. No, it erupted at a place that would forever be remembered in the echoes of legend: Mount Dole in Brittany. Though to human eyes it may have seemed like just another rocky formation, in the cosmic drama it became the first battlefield, the stage upon which heaven itself shook. Michael, the Prince of Angels, the guardian of God's order, did not stand alone. Around him gathered the hosts of heaven, countless angels, radiant as the morning star, yet armored for war. Their breastplates gleamed like molten gold, their swords shimmered with fire not of this world, and their wings spread wide in readiness. These were not delicate messengers of peace as human art often imagines. These were warriors, terrible in beauty, fierce in loyalty. Each carried not only weapons, but also the authority of their creator, their strength bound to the justice they defended. Opposite them, The dragon rose, his scales black as obsidian, each one a mirror of corruption. From his mouth poured smoke and flame, his wings beating storms into the heavens. Around him gathered not noble angels, but twisted parodies of what they once were. Demons, once radiant beings, now deformed by rebellion. Their wings, once white, now ragged and scorched. Their faces, once shining with wisdom, now contorted with hatred. Where the heavenly hosts reflected harmony, the demonic legions reflected chaos, shrieks, snarls, and the clashing of clawed hands upon jagged weapons. It was a sight unlike any the universe had ever seen. Never before had heaven known war. Never before had creation echoed with the sounds of battle. The clash at Mount Dole was the first of its kind, a storm of steel, fire, and will. When the trumpet sounded, whether by divine command or Michael's own rallying cry, the armies surged forward. The heavens thundered with the beating of wings, the clash of blades, and the cries of angels who fought not for themselves, but for the order of all creation. The earth beneath Mount Dole trembled as though it too felt the weight of the conflict, the stones groaning under the strain of divine war. Michael's voice rang out above the chaos, not in fear but in authority. Who is like God? The cry, which is the very meaning of his name, reverberated through the battlefield like a spear of light. At that sound, the angels rallied with greater courage, their weapons cutting through the darkness. Each strike they made was not merely of metal against scale, but of light against shadow, of obedience against rebellion. Yet the dragon did not yield easily. His roar split the sky, shaking even the stars, and with a sweep of his massive tail he cast down hosts of angels. Fire belched from his mouth, scorching the ranks, and his claws tore through shields and armor. His demons, emboldened by his fury, swarmed like locusts, shrieking curses and unleashing chaos upon every front. To many, it seemed as though the tide of darkness could not be turned. The battle raged for hours, perhaps days, perhaps beyond time itself, for in that clash human measurement of hours lost all meaning. Waves of angels surged forward only to be pushed back by the dragon's fury. Spears of fire pierced demon after demon, their bodies dissolving in his smoke. Yet more seemed to rise to take their place. The air was thick with smoke and blood, the ground scorched with fire, the heavens themselves groaning as though they might collapse under the weight of such violence. Still, Michael fought at the front. He did not command from a distance, but led with his sword of light raised high. Where the dragon's claws struck, Michael's shield turned the blow. Where the dragon's fire roared, Michael's sword cut through the flames, dividing light from darkness. His presence was not only a rallying point, but a declaration. That rebellion could not stand unchallenged. And yet, even Michael felt the strain. The dragon's strength was vast, his hatred boundless. Again and again, Michael pressed forward, only to be met with another surge of fury. At times, it seemed the battle swayed in Satan's favor. The demons' laughter filled the air as they struck angels down, their voices taunting with promises of chaos everlasting. But the angels did not break. For every one who fell, two more rose with renewed determination. Their faith was their shield, their obedience their armor. They did not fight for themselves, but for the God who had created them. And that purpose infused their blows with strength no darkness could comprehend. The clash at Mount Dole was not just a contest of weapons. It was a test of endurance, of loyalty, of resolve. The dragon fought with rage, but Michael fought with conviction. And conviction, though slower to strike, is far harder to defeat. The legend tells us that as the battle stretched on, the very heavens bore scars from the struggle. Stars dimmed, clouds churned with fire, and the rivers of light that once flowed in perfect harmony now trembled with discord. Creation itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see whether light or darkness would prevail. What made this battle so terrifying was not only the dragon's strength, but the uncertainty of its outcome. This was no easy victory. It was no swift triumph. It was a prolonged, brutal clash in which even the angels felt the weight of doubt. Would the dragon's fury consume all? Would rebellion overwhelm the order of heaven? For a moment, the answer seemed unclear. And yet, in the midst of uncertainty, Michael stood unbroken. Every time the dragon lunged, Michael met him. Every time the legions of demons swarmed, Michael rallied his hosts. His very presence was a beacon of hope, reminding the angels why they fought. The cries of war shook creation itself. From the highest heavens to the depths of the earth, echoes of the battle resounded. Mortals could not yet hear them, but one day they would feel their shadow in every war, every struggle, every choice between right and wrong. For what began at Mount Dole was not merely a battle in the heavens. It was the template for every battle between good and evil that would ever follow. Finally, after countless clashes, the battlefield could no longer contain the war. Mount Dole, scarred and broken, became but the first chapter. The dragon, though mighty, could not secure final victory. He withdrew, his wings beating storms as he fled, seeking another battleground. The war was not over. It had only begun. And so the struggle spilled beyond Mount Dole, spreading across the heavens, into realms seen and unseen. Michael, sword raised, did not relent. The hosts of heaven pursued, determined that rebellion should not triumph. The stage was. The clash at Mount Dole had been only the beginning. Though the earth beneath trembled and the mountain bore scars of celestial violence, the war could not be contained in a single place. With every roar of the dragon and every cry of Michael's army, the battle spilled further outward, breaking the boundaries of one battlefield and flooding into the heavens themselves. This was no short skirmish. It was a war that stretched not in hours, nor in mere days, but in a realm where time itself seemed to falter. The very heavens became the arena of conflict, skies torn open with lightning, flames roaring like rivers across the firmament, the air trembling with the endless beating of wings both holy and fallen. Every corner of creation seemed to vibrate with the echoes of war, as though the cosmos itself were caught in its throes. At times, the hosts of heaven surged forward, radiant as a storm of fire, their swords of light driving the demons back into shadows. In those moments, victory seemed almost within grasp, as the angels' songs of defiance pierced through the cacophony of screams. The brilliance of their wings lit up the battlefield like dawn breaking across endless night, and it seemed as though hope itself had become a weapon. But then the tide shifted. The dragon roared, his body swelling with fury, his wings blotting out the heavens as he struck with claws that could tear through stone and spirit alike. With every sweep of his tail, legions of angels were thrown into chaos, scattering like sparks before the storm. His demons rallied to his power, a tide of shrieking darkness that pressed forward with relentless hunger. Their laughter was cruel, their strikes vicious, their strength born not of love but of hate. And in those moments, it seemed the rebellion might consume everything. Back and forth the struggle raged, like waves crashing endlessly against one another. Neither side yielded. Neither side gave quarter. The war became not merely a contest of strength, but of endurance, of will, of unbreakable faith. For the angels, every moment of resistance was an act of loyalty. They fought not to preserve themselves, but to uphold the order of heaven, to stand firm in the truth that no one could rise above God. Each clash of their swords was an echo of Michael's cry. It was like God, a declaration that no pride, no rebellion, no darkness could dethrone the Creator. For the demons, every strike was fueled by hatred and despair. Once, they had known the light, but now they clung to their rebellion as though it were their very essence. Every wound they inflicted, every angel they cast down, was their attempt to prove that their choice, their fall, was not in vain. They fought with desperation, as though victory alone could justify their defiance. The skies bore witness to their struggle. Flashes of lightning tore through clouds heavy with fire and smoke. The thunder of wings resounded like drums of war, and the clash of swords rang out as if the stars themselves were breaking. The heavens that had once been serene, radiant with harmony, now writhed in chaos. Creation seemed split between light and darkness, both forces locked in a war without end. Days passed, or what felt like days, though time itself seemed warped by the magnitude of the conflict. For mortals, such a span might have been only a heartbeat, but for the angels who fought, it was an eternity of struggle. Fatigue, though foreign to heavenly beings, pressed upon them like a weight. The endless roar of the dragon, the ceaseless surge of his legions, tested the very limits of their endurance. Yet they did not falter. Even when the demons pressed hardest, even when the dragon's fire seared their ranks, the angels lifted their swords once more. Their strength was not their own. It came from the one they served, from the justice they defended, from the light that darkness could never comprehend. Michael, their commander, remained unyielding. Wherever the battle raged fiercest, there he was. His sword of light clashed again and again against the dragon's scales, sparks flying like meteors across the sky. His shield withstood the beast's fiery breath. His voice rallied his soldiers when despair threatened to claim them. He was the heart of their defiance, the unbroken line that held firm against chaos. But even he felt the strain. The dragon was vast, his power monstrous. Again and again, their swords met, and each time the clash shook the heavens. Neither yielded, neither broke. Each strike was not just steel against scale, but faith against pride, obedience against rebellion. And all the while, one question echoed through the heavens. Would good truly overcome evil? It was a question not born of doubt in God's power, but of the staggering weight of the battle itself. For the angels, it was a test of trust. They had never known war before. They had never seen creation torn apart by violence. To fight on endlessly, without certainty of when victory would come, demanded faith beyond measure. For the demons, the question was a taunt. They mocked the angels, shouting that their endurance would fail, that their faith was weakness, that their loyalty was slavery. Their voices rose above the clash, sneering promises of victory, of heaven remade in their own image. Every word dripped with the venom of rebellion, every taunt an attempt to weaken the resolve of those who still stood for light. And yet, in that endless struggle, something profound was revealed. This war was not only about who held the greater strength. It was about the nature of loyalty and defiance, of love and hate, of justice and chaos. The angels' endurance was not just physical, it was spiritual. They endured because they loved the one they served. The demons endured because they hated the one they rejected. Michael, their commander, remained unyielding. Wherever the battle raged fiercest, there he was. His sword of light clashed again and again against the dragon's scales, sparks flying like meteors across the sky. His shield withstood the beast's fiery breath. His voice rallied his soldiers when despair threatened to claim them. He was the heart of their defiance, the unbroken line that held firm against chaos. But even he felt the strain. The dragon was vast, his power monstrous. Again and again, their swords met, and each time the clash shook the heavens. Neither yielded, neither broke. Each strike was not just steel against scale, but faith against pride, obedience against rebellion. And all the while, one question echoed through the heavens. Would good truly overcome evil? It was a question not born of doubt in God's power, but of the staggering weight of the battle itself. For the angels, it was a test of trust. They had never known war before. They had never seen creation torn apart by violence. To fight on endlessly, without certainty of when victory would come, demanded faith beyond measure. For the demons, the question was a taunt. They mocked the angels, shouting that their endurance would fail, that their faith was weakness, that their loyalty was slavery. Their voices rose above the clash, sneering promises of victory, of heaven remade in their own image. Every word dripped with the venom of rebellion, every taunt an attempt to weaken the resolve of those who still stood for light. And yet, in that endless struggle, something profound was revealed. This war was not only about who held the greater strength. It was about the nature of loyalty and defiance, of love and hate, of justice and chaos. The angels' endurance was not just physical, it was spiritual. They endured because they loved the one they served. The demons endured because they hated the one they rejected. This was why the war stretched on for so long. It was not just a clash of armies. It was the very collision of two eternal choices. The struggle became cosmic in scale. Stars flickered as though dimmed by the smoke of battle. The firmament rippled with fire and shadow. Even the earth below, though far removed, seemed to tremble under the weight of the conflict. Mortals would later tell stories of storms without cause, of strange lights in the sky, of nights darker than they should have been. These were but the faint shadows of the war above. And still, neither side relented. For the angels, every day of endurance was a proclamation that God's order would not fall. For the demons, every strike was a desperate attempt to overthrow it. Both sides poured out all they had, and yet the outcome remained uncertain. This prolonged struggle was more than a battle. It was a proving ground. It revealed the nature of good and evil in their starkest forms. Good endured, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Evil resisted, not because it could win, but because it could not bear to submit. And as the war raged on, creation itself waited with bated breath. The questions still lingered, heavy as thunder in the skies. Would light break through the darkness, or would the shadow consume all? The answer would come, but not yet. For though the angels held their ground and the dragon roared in fury, the struggle had not reached its end. The final confrontation still awaited, far from where it had begun. The battle at Mount Dole had opened the war, but the prolonged struggle in the heavens carried it to a scale unimaginable. And soon, it would find its conclusion upon a sacred mount, a place that would forever be remembered, Mont Tum.